On national television this weekend, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem faced sharp questioning about federal immigration enforcement and struggled to answer a basic, fundamental question about ICE operations. The exchange occurred during a high-profile interview on CNN State of the Union with anchor Jake Tapper, where the controversial federal response to a deadly ICE-involved shooting in Minneapolis was at the center of the discussion. Noem's responses drew widespread attention and intense political reaction, as critics said she dodged direct queries and doubled down on the administration's narrative before investigations were complete. The confrontation stemmed from the fatal shooting of 37-year-old Renee Nicole Good, who was killed by an ICE agent in South Minneapolis during an enforcement action earlier this month. New video footage of the incident has circulated online, showing conflicting interpretations of her actions moments before the shots were fired. Federal officials, including Noem, President Trump, and Vice President J.D. Vance, quickly defended the ICE agent's actions as self-defense, a position that many local leaders, legal experts, and eyewitnesses have questioned. During the interview, Tapper pressed Noem on why the administration reached definitive conclusions about the shooting before a full investigation was completed, including why senior officials publicly portrayed Good as a domestic terrorist. Tapper asked whether stating a conclusion so early might do a disservice to the officer by shaping public perception before all facts were known. Rather than directly answering, Noem shifted the focus to criticizing local critics and media coverage. Tapper repeatedly returned to a fundamental issue. What exactly did Good do with her vehicle? Was it an attempt to strike the ICE agent, or was she trying to leave the scene? This question goes to the heart of whether the use of deadly force was justified. Noem avoided a clear response, instead insisting the vehicle had been weaponized and that officials were certain of the narrative, even though the investigation had not concluded and video evidence remained contested. At one point, Tapper outlined that he did not see the events firsthand and noted that some observers said Good was simply moving her car to get away, not attacking anyone. When asked how she could know which version was accurate, Noem again asserted the official narrative without presenting disputed evidence, claiming that federal conversations and preliminary footage supported her view, a stance that drew criticism for presuming guilt before due process. Noem also defended early statements labeling Good's actions as domestic terrorism, language that many legal experts say should not be applied absent a full investigation. Tapper challenged whether applying such a charge before facts were fully known was responsible. Instead of addressing the substance of the concern, Noem criticized local officials and repeated that federal authorities were trying to protect public safety, leaving the direct question unanswered. The segment quickly drew political fire from both sides of the aisle. Democrats seized on Noem's refusal to directly address core factual questions as evidence of evasiveness and poor leadership. House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries called for Noem's resignation, arguing that her handling of the situation showed a lack of seriousness and an unwillingness to engage with basic accountability. Minnesota officials also weighed in. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz have publicly disputed the federal account of the shooting, pointing to video evidence that suggests Good's SUV was moving away from officers when shots were fired. They argued that the federal narrative, championed by Noem, does not align with readily available footage, raising questions about federal transparency. Critics have further argued that Noem's emphasis on defending federal action and escalating rhetoric inflamed tensions rather than calming them. Minneapolis has seen widespread protests demanding accountability and clearer answers about what happened and why. Some activists contend the administration's early narrative hardened perceptions before investigators finished reviewing the evidence. Tapper also questioned whether Noem's quick certainty contradicted the principle that law enforcement matters require careful, evidence-based assessment. Tapper noted that independent videos suggested alternative sequences of events to the federal account. Noem did not concede that point, instead saying she was relying on totality of federal information, though she did not provide specifics to counter the video evidence. The broader debate over ICE and federal immigration enforcement has become a flashpoint in national politics. Immigration policy, use of force, federal-local cooperation, and civil liberties are all entwined in the controversy. Noem's performance on national television highlighted how unresolved questions, particularly about process, fairness, and evidence, continue to stir public debate. Legal experts watching the exchange noted that Noem's reluctance to directly answer the question about prejudgment was striking. Many observers argue that federal officials should exercise caution and avoid making assertions before official investigations are complete, especially in cases involving lethal force. Tapper's line of questioning reflected this concern. Supporters of Noem and the Trump administration have defended her stance, saying she was being unfairly attacked for expressing confidence in federal personnel and protocols. They argue that the media's framing ignores the complexity of law enforcement decision-making in real time. Nevertheless, critics say avoiding direct answers undermines credibility. The exchange also touched on perceptions of media bias. Noem accused the press of mischaracterizing events and of not giving federal officials credit for their perspective. Tapper pushed back, emphasizing the importance of sticking to observable facts and evidence rather than assumptions. The back and forth illustrates the deep mistrust between some federal officials and sections of the national media. As protests continue nationwide over the Minneapolis shooting, calls for independent and transparent investigation have grown louder. Local and state officials are seeking access to all evidence and involvement in the review process. Many community members have said that incomplete answers heighten frustration and erode trust in federal leadership. For Noem, the national spotlight and political scrutiny are likely to remain intense. Her role as DHS Secretary places her at the forefront of immigration enforcement debates, which are already deeply polarized. How she navigates ongoing questioning and criticism may shape public perception in the weeks ahead. The situation underscores a broader challenge facing government officials, balancing timely communication with accuracy and caution. Making definitive statements before investigations are complete risks misinformation and public distrust, while delaying communication entirely can fuel uncertainty. The Noem interview sparked renewed discussion about where that balance should lie.